Hello, everyone. Happy Friday, and welcome to A Course in Miracles 365 Awakening to Love. I'm your host, Tomas Garza, and this is going to be a lot of fun today here. Where we are is the workbook for students, and we are starting off today with a number of very, very powerful lessons. Very powerful. In fact, the workbook itself tells us that they're very powerful. So we'll talk about this today. We're at lesson 61 here, and we've concluded a period of review where we've reviewed the first 50 lessons, which are ideas. These are spiritual ideas that one can sit with, that one can meditate on, that one can practice in the way that the workbook outlines, or actually, if you wanted to, a different way. They're ideas that we can contemplate that have to do with universal spirituality, absolute truth. In other words, truth itself, what is reality, which has always been, no matter how much we have gone off and deviated from it and attempted to hide and lashed out at each other and created really a hot mess here in the world for all of the beauty that it surrounds us. We have created struggle. We've created predatory economic systems, haven't we? All over the world, we've created lack, struggle, strife. Reality, the truth of who we really are, what we really are, has remained unchanged. And spiritual texts like A Course in Miracles aim to start orienting our minds, orienting our being back toward what we really are. So, as Marianne Williamson puts it, it's a return to love. And as I'm putting it here, it's awakening to love. Really, it's reawakening to it, isn't it? It's removing layers, and these exercises so help us. So, wherever you're joining us from today, welcome. We've had literally an international audience here on the live stream and in the comments. So if you're catching the replay, definitely I'm going to ask a question here right now to follow up on yesterday's live stream. And I'd love to hear some of your answers on the live. So if you're tuning in live, here's the question that I'd like to ask everybody today, and then we'll get into lesson 61 in the workbook. So the question that I have for everyone is, how has spirituality changed your life? We took a little bit of some time on that yesterday to talk about that. So that's the question. How has spirituality, your walk, your spiritual practice, whatever that includes for you, whatever that entails, how has that impacted you? How are you different now than when you began? Are you different? And if so, how? Yeah. How has spirituality transformed? How has it changed you? If you prefer to think of this as how has it helped you, then that's also perfectly valid. Yeah. I'd love to know your answers in here. So whether you're tuning in live or whether you're catching the replay, that's the question. How has spirituality changed, transformed, helped you? How has it lifted you up? How are you a different person today than when you began this tradition, whatever it was? For me, A Course in Miracles came into my life in 2013. So it's been 8 years. I'm a vastly different person. I'm much more calm. And I was kind of calm before, but now I'm even more calm. I feel I have a greater degree of patience for myself and for other people, and a sense of equilibrium in the midst of some real chaotic world events, let's be honest. In the midst of a lot of fear and a lot of fear mongering and hatred and a pandemic, in the midst of all kinds of things going on, I feel very calm and composed. And if this had happened before I found A Course in Miracles, I think I would have handled things much differently. Without calm, as much calm, without as much composure. Yeah, for me, spiritual practice has enabled me to weather the storms, so to speak, and maintain my course, quite honestly. Yeah. So that's what it's done in a nutshell for me. We'd love to hear from all of you on that. So where we are today, lesson 61 now takes us out of the review period, which was the last 10 days, where we were reviewing 5 ideas a day. We're back to the regular pattern here in the workbook of 1 idea a day. And what we've got going on here is we've got a very simple yet very powerful and very profound statement here. I am the light of the world. Yeah, that's just it. I am the light of the world. So if you do nothing else with this statement today, this is something that is very beneficial and very powerful, very good to just repeat to yourself. If you want to grab a sticky note, write it down and post it somewhere where you're going to see it. Fantastic. Right? People that are going through the workbook for students sometimes set alerts and alarms on their watches, reminders about the day's idea, even if it's just the text of it, so that it reminds them. Whatever reminds you of this, you could certainly, and the workbook suggests that if you're able to practice for longer periods of time, to sit with this idea, it's very, very good. So whatever you're able to do, even if it's just watching this live stream, you are the light of the world. I am the light of the world. We are the light of the world. We are, each and every one of us. It's not a matter of some of us being the light of the world and other people aren't. Yeah, people that believe differently from you are still the light of the world. People that behave very badly toward other people and are very much in line with the ego's value system are still, at the core, the light of the world. We're talking ultimate truth here. This is not an arrogant thing to say. When a course says it, it's just stating the truth. You and everyone else is also the light of the world, so the ego would like us to believe otherwise, wouldn't it? It'd like to say, well, yeah, I'm the light of the world, but you're not. And your neighbor who is of a different political persuasion across the street is not. And your friends who are kind of wild and crazy, I disapprove of them. They're not the light of the world, but I am. Me, right? Yeah, no, it's not that kind of a statement. That is an ego statement. So here, what we're doing with A Course in Miracles is we're allowing ourselves to have God, the Holy Spirit, speak to us and honestly to run the show for us. We're getting out of our own way. This is one explanation for what spirituality in the world means by getting out of our own way, is recognizing that the ego doesn't make good decisions. It might make a fabulous decision 1 minute, and the next minute it causes you frustration, pain, suffering, makes you feel afraid. So to say that you're the light of the world is just a statement that's true. Really, it's the truth about yourself. You're not saying, in saying this, that you're better than anyone else. You're not saying that you're superior to anyone else, that you have better and higher spiritual abilities, whatever that means, right? What does that actually mean? You know, it's not saying that you're more capable than anyone else. It's the truth about all of us. So let's talk about how the ego is most likely to respond to this. Yeah. You may find yourself, as you practice today's idea, entertaining a little voice in your head, like a small dog that yips and barks constantly. Y'all know the voice that we're talking about here. A yip, 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 yip of, well, who are you to be doing this? You're not the light of the world. You know, you can't even do long division. You can't even balance your checkbook. You spilled coffee on yourself. You suck. Who are you? Who are you to do this? And then that same voice will tell you how great you are the next minute, won't it? Relative to everyone else, and will make all kinds of comparisons. And the ego is definitely threatened by this. Right? The ego doesn't know what to do. That's why we're so imbalanced in the world. That's why our emotions are all over the map, isn't it? That's why we feel great one minute, just on top of the world, wonderful, powerful, competent. Then something could happen. Somebody could say something, or yeah, something apparently right external to us could take place here in the world, and then we'd feel afraid. We would feel frustrated. We'd feel a sense of lack, less than. It's wild because the ego doesn't know what it's doing at all. It's not based on truth. We are not separate. Now, as we have that experience, well, how do we work within this? Because we're all here, right, talking about all of this. So, what do we actually do? Well, enter spiritual practice. A workbook for students here in A Course in Miracles gives us something to do. Today, it's repeat this idea: I am the light of the world. How does that make you feel when you say that? When you recite it, whether it's out loud or whether it's internally in your mind? How does that sit with you? How does that hit you? How does that resonate with you? I am the light of the world. Yeah. And that's something that we can do, even if it's just to repeat the day's idea. This is leading us into some very profound lessons coming up here in the workbook. And I know that some of you may have jumped ahead, right, to look at those. It's like reading the last page of a novel first. So, in other words, if the novelist is really, really good, they will have had the major conflict resolution in the novel before the last page. So when someone flips right to the last page, all they're looking at is maybe some beautiful language or something, and they'll have to start back over at the start and see what happened. Yeah. So I know if you've looked at some of this already, you'll know we're going to be talking about forgiveness as it is discussed, as it's presented in A Course in Miracles, which is not the same way that we commonly think of it. I mean, you'll notice this about all of this language. It uses terms like forgiveness, like atonement, in different ways than we're used to using them in the world, all of it on purpose, completely deliberately. And Jesus presents these to us in this way so that we will think about it. These exercises do give us something concrete to do. And what you can do is make an effort to create some space for yourself. A meditation practice is creating space for yourself. So, a practice period in the workbook is the same thing. It's creating space for yourself. What kind of space? Well, I mean, it could be physical space. You could deliberately choose to go and sit someplace where you have some peace and quiet, and that is always a wonderful thing. But what we're talking about in creating space is creating psychological space. It's creating space to make different decisions. In that space, we're not triggered. so readily. If we see, say, our neighbor and they provoke an instant reaction in us of, let's say, anger, frustration, judgment, with the practice of spirituality, there is a gap between seeing this person and the habitual reaction. In that gap, we can fill it with love. Honestly, you can ask the Holy Spirit, you can ask God, you can ask your guides, whatever that looks like for you, to fill that space with love. What happens? We choose differently. We act differently. We show up differently. We have a fundamentally different experience by creating that emotional and psychological space. That is what these workbook exercises do for us. And the creation of this space is most definitely, to answer my own question from earlier, one of the things that spirituality has hands down, without any doubt, given me. Space to make different decisions, space to be different, to show up differently in the world. That's a big one. That's a big one. That's why these exercises are so important if you're following along. So let's see who's joining us here on the stream today. It's always my pleasure to interact here with you live. And, if you're here watching this, how has spirituality changed your life? How has it transformed you or helped you? How are you a different person now as opposed to when you began your practice, whenever that was and whatever that looks like? Okay. So, Robert, hello. Good evening. How are you? And yeah, so Robert, you were opened up to spirituality by crystals. They were your door. And let me read the rest. And you practice many different things. Yeah, definitely, right. A deeper sense of calmness and patience too. Okay, thank you for sharing that, Robert. Yeah, I would echo that. There is a deeper sense of calm and a deeper sense of patience, like we were just talking about a minute ago, with creating that meditative space, that psychological space for ourselves to make different decisions. So when you're calmer, when you're more patient, you're far more likely to choose love, because that in itself is a loving choice, to be patient, to exercise patience. And it's so tempting sometimes not to, isn't it? I mean, this happens to us all of the time. It really does. So yeah, thank you for that comment, Robert. That's really wonderful. And Michelle, hello, and Abla, hi, how are you? Thank you for tuning in. Now, if you're going to catch this on the replay, or if you're watching this on the replay, the question that we're discussing here, in light of lesson 61 in the workbook, I Am the Light of the World, is how has spirituality changed you? How are you a different person now as opposed to when you began your practice? Now, you might have begun your practice last week, and it might have been years and years ago, even decades ago. And of course, as Robert mentioned, his door was through crystals. Mine was through meditation. So there are many doors and many different spiritual traditions. And one of the beautiful things I think about all of this is, here in the 21st century, with modern technology, with the internet, we have ready access to every spiritual tradition, frankly, that has probably ever existed. Everything that's currently extant in the world right now that you can tap into and practice is available. And it's really a wonderful time to have all of these options. So there are many doors, and whichever you've chosen, how are you different? How are you a different person? Okay. Well, thank you all for tuning in here with me today, and I will be back here tomorrow. Again, a reminder, this is a daily live stream, and thank you all for joining me. Have a great rest of your day.